So it was probably around 11 that I was able to put my finger on what was going on with myself because I was with my mom at the grocery store, and she would typically buy like some sort of tabloid magazine. They had this feature article on this guy from the Midwest who decided that he was going to be a woman. So, the article was about his journey. Basically, I read this story. I was like going, "Oh my gosh, I'm a transsexual."
And let's get right to it. At what point in your life did you feel the need, like something wasn't right,
Well,
age wise?
well, yeah, I guess it goes really far back. Probably around 6 or 7. Like first grade. I started to get sort of a notion that things weren't normal. Obviously, at that time, a 6 or 7 year old's not going to really have an idea of what it is exactly, or have a like ready definition for that sort of thing. But it started to kind of um, become apparent around that time, and it was about the same time that I started getting teased for being a little different, and so it kind of coincided with that. So around first or second grade is when that started happening. Yeah.
But what were the feelings you were having? Like
Well,
you weren't feeling masculine? Or I mean, you're a little kid, obviously, but
yeah.
what were you feeling that made you say something's different?
Well, it was a lot like just being, you'd look in the mirror and you go, that's not me. I don't feel like that. And it's a strange, it's kind of hard to describe to somebody who's not experiencing that, but yeah, you feel like it's not you in the mirror, and that your body as you see it is not what you believe it should be. I guess is probably the easiest way to describe it. You have an idea in your head that maybe you should be, you know, a girl instead of a boy, and you're just kind of stuck with this some kind of vague notion in your head. Again, as a kid, you don't have a lot of the cognitive ability to kind of decipher what's going on here. You just know that it isn't right, and so you're trying to figure it out from there.
But did you look feminine? Or I mean, as a
Well,
kid, I don't even know. I
at
mean,
six, it's kind of hard to say. I
right,
mean,
that's what I mean. Like at 6, it's a little rough. I mean,
well, actually, that's a good point. I mean, when I was, I guess, in third grade, so I guess I probably would have been about 8. I started getting teased for being kind of feminine. I guess they would call me gay, and they would call me I don't know if I can say this.
you can
They
say
used to
whatever you
call me
like.
like
That's fine.
faggot and gay and homo and that sort of thing. And again, I didn't know what any of that stuff meant. I
Sure.
was a sheltered kid, I guess, but so that started coming through, and you know it's the people that you're around that start to actually make these notions, and kids are really easy with those type of labels, so I guess that's kind of where it landed. Yeah.
Yeah, kids could be rough.
Yeah. That's true.
um, uh, so you go to high school. I'm assuming you're in the high school
Yeah.
age.
Well,
You're into your 20s, still feeling the same thing, but not.
gosh, yes. So it was probably around 11 that I was able to put my finger on what was going on with myself. I was able to kind of get that definition. And it was really a weird way too, because I was with my mom at the grocery store, and she would typically buy like some sort of tabloid magazine. Along with whatever groceries she was buying. And this time she bought this magazine called Woman's Day. I guess it's probably just a step up from like the Enquirer or something like that. But they had this feature article on this guy from the Midwest who decided that he was going to be a woman. So the article was about his journey, I guess, and it it didn't go well. Basically, I read this story. I was like going, "Oh my gosh, I'm a transsexual," and the other part of it was, "Oh my gosh, this doesn't look like a really good way to be living." So I tried to hide it, and I recognized, what I was, and I recognized the place and the time that I was in. So I was 11. That would have been 1982. I was living in Washington D.C. and I was living in a military family,
Hmm.
and yeah, notions of things like homosexuality and uh, trans anything would have been completely off the radar and absolutely taboo. So, from a family perspective, I recognized that it wasn't going to be like a good run for me if I actually came out at that time. So I basically just kept it on the down low. My parents actually around that same time kind of realized that I was a little off. And what ended up happening is they sent me to military school. So I didn't go to like public high school. I went to military school. I guess they wanted to kind of shape me up and get me right. And so I went to military school in Virginia. And well, it didn't work. It
Okay.
was I was able to hold it together, and honestly, the education and the structure was probably good for me, but it's didn't change my notion of where I was and what I was, and it certainly didn't help with my dysphoria. So it was one of those things. Yeah.
I mean, that would have to be the last place you'd want to go to.
Oh
I mean,
gosh, yes. Yeah,
that's like,
it was not exactly it wasn't I can't say that it was a pleasant experience, but
mm,
I was not doing well in public school. There was a lot of um, isolation. I was kind of a pariah in junior high school, and moving to a new school and where there wasn't, in military school, you are kind of stripped of that individuality. You have a uniform and you're,
mhm,
basically just kind of a cadet. And honestly, that helped a little bit in regards to, people calling me names or that sort of thing. Maybe I was presenting a little feminine, but it wasn't coming through because of the uniforms and the social regimens that we had within military school. So,
mm.
perhaps it helped in terms of my keeping it on the down low. So yeah, that's where that was.
Now how long were you in the military? I mean, did you finish the school,
Yeah, I
military school?
graduated
Really?
from that
Okay.
school in I'm pretty old. So 1987 is when I graduated. So it was a while ago. And, the funny thing is, and I don't know why I did it. Well, actually, I do know why I did it. I joined the Army afterwards. So as soon
Really?
as I graduated from high school, I joined the Army Reserves. And I did it because I realized I wasn't going to be able to afford college on my own. So I wanted I took advantage of the GI Bill. And so
Okay.
I went through the reserves, the basic training and all that jazz. And again, I was able to hold it together. I was just kind of coping. Uh, Geez, it was kind of difficult, but you do what you have to do, and you recognize that the outcome of being outed is you get a medical discharge and you lose everything that you worked for.
Mhm.
You're motivated to kind of keep it quiet. So that's what I did.
Hmm. Now, were you dating
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, I well,
men?
I
I mean, not men. I'm sorry,
well,
women.
I actually, that's it's funny that you say that because I've always kind of um, I've bifurcated my identity and my sexuality,
Okay.
and my identity definitely was wrapped up with dysphoria, gender dysphoria. So I was kind of stuck in a state where I felt like my self perception was in a state where I felt like I needed to transition, but my sexuality was always kind of I guess I would call it flexible. I would I would date women, but I was also attracted to men. I didn't really have a problem with that either way. So it was one of those things where if the opportunity arose, yeah, I would definitely go for it if I felt like I was in a state where there was like a mutual attraction or something like that. So I
Okay.
wouldn't call it exactly well, I guess it is kind of bisexual, but in a
Mhm.
way, I skewed towards female more than male. So I dated a lot more women than I ever interacted with men. So it was always kind of skewed in that direction. And
Okay.
ultimately, I got married to a woman. So I kind of decided that if I wanted to have a family, I would have to do that. And I did want a family. So I did get married and I did have a long term relationship with a woman.
Okay. And you have a dog, I can see.
Ah, I do
Nothing
have a
wrong with that.
dog. I
Nothing wrong
guess
with
we
that.
might want to stop
No, no, no,
recording for
no,
a
no,
second or anything like
no.
that.
It's not that loud.
Okay.
I just hear in the background. It's fine.
Yeah,
What's the dog's name?
I think that I'm the only one in the house, so I might have to actually get him to kind of quiet down here. So I might need to kind of step out and tell him to pipe down. He's a wire hair pointing griffin, so he
Oh,
has a tendency to like want to patrol that
sure.
perimeter in our house and in our neighborhood. So he's always ready to bark. So
What's a name?
oh,
What
Rocco. Um,
Rocco?
yeah, my daughter wanted to actually name him something like Rainbow Sparkles Unicorn or something like that. I said, no, we're not doing that. His name's Rocco, and that's the one we're going with. So that's
Yeah,
what we
it's
did.
fine. I mean, it's off in the distance. It's not a distraction.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if you have to, let me know. Um, have you had any surgical procedures to enhance the process?
Oh gosh, yes. I always felt like um, if you were transitioning and you didn't look you know female from the neck up, you're not gonna be able to actually integrate into society in any meaningful way. So I went ahead and did FFS, which is facial feminization surgery,
Hmm,
and I did that in I think it was 2021. So it was just after COVID kind of cleared out. I had this surgery. And it was one of those things where you look at it, you get the surgery, and it's not an easy one, by the way, and they take the bandages off, and you're like going, well, that wasn't much. That was a lot of money for not much, not much bang for the buck, but it takes a long time to kind of heal up and get in the right places. So things kind of work their way through it over, about 8, 9 months, and you don't notice it because it's glacial slow, and I was just kind of I was at the mall, like having like coffee, one day, and this person just kind of walked up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're gorgeous. What's your secret?" And I was like, "What? No, really, really? Okay. I had surgery." So not much of a secret really, but I kind of went with that, and yeah, it's really interesting place because it did help my self perception issues with dysphoria quite a bit,
Mm,
and after the facial feminization surgery, I had breast augmentation, and that was to kind of fix my body ratios so that they kind of conform to kind of more feminine shape. So there's differences between men and women in terms of ratios,
sure.
and the augmentation kind of helped a lot, kind of settle that down for me. And again, it was another thing that helped with my self-perception and kind of mitigated a lot of the symptoms that were coming from gender dysphoria. Excuse me.
No problem. Any other surgery?
um, well, I'm slated for bottom surgery next spring, and that would be pretty much the end of it, I think. I do try to maintain things. I go with uh, Botox and fill and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm 2 weeks away from my 56th birthday, and I need
Really?
to. I felt like, because I transitioned so late, I felt like I missed out on my life, in at least a large part of, or one aspect of my life, and it was kind of difficult for me. So when I finally did transition and I was able to successfully integrate, I wanted to kind of live that compressed life. So I'm working hard to kind of hold it together, and not just be the trans grandma or whatever, and just kind of get through all of the aspects of an adult woman, and kind of experience all of that. So that's what I've been doing.
No,
Yeah.
what was the reaction of, when you finally said, I'm going to do this process, of your family and friends? I mean,
Well,
supportive or,
yeah,
the opposite?
that's a yes and a no. So, my immediate family, when I first came out, they were shocked. They didn't know what to make of it because I apparently kept it very quiet for most of my life. The odd thing is that I started transition in 2018. I started my transition on July 11th, 2018, and it was due to a lot of therapy that I was going through. So I started my therapy back in 2016 because I was having problems dealing with depression and anxiety, and a mounting issue with health. Excuse me.
Okay.
Uh, Mounting health issues. I was getting migraines, and they were getting worse and worse and worse. And I wasn't sure if it was due to the anxiety and the depression, but I was working with my therapist to kind of come up with some plans because I had no intention of transitioning at that point. I was pretty old, and I kind of figured it wasn't going to actually do anything for me anyway. So I just kind of wrote it off.
You said you're 56, right?
Yeah, essentially.
When did you transition? Like,
So
say,
yeah,
I'm going, boom, let's do it. Like,
I
I mean, the everyday type of thing.
so what happened was I was in therapy, from 2016 onward. And we worked through a lot of cognitive exercises and reframing to try to mitigate the gender dysphoria without transition, but nothing really worked. Or it would work for a while and then it wouldn't work. So uh, my therapist finally basically just said, "Look, this is basically the last thing that we can do. So you're still having the migraines, you're still having a lot of depression and anxiety. Why don't we give this a try?" I gave it. I seriously just gave it a hope and hell. I just said, "Yeah, no, it's probably not going to work out. So you know what? Let's just do it and see what happens." Um, so I started in 2018, and what ended up happening was, um, yeah, things got better. I didn't notice any changes, honestly. I was just taking the hormone pills in the beginning to kind of like change everything up. And honestly,
Excuse me.
uh, if you talk to like a gynecologist or an endocrinologist, estrogen should actually be aggravating migraines, but in my case, it did not. I was headache free pretty much after that point. Now I recognize that that's probably psychosomatic. That's in
Mm,
my head, but my therapist is like going, well, the hormones probably weren't, causing it, but it was basically your decision to kind of like do this thing instead of just holding it in all the time. You hold this in for decades and it takes its whole. So
mm,
it was
sure. Yeah.
something that I started to realize that it had value. And people think that transition is sort of a whim sometimes, but in this case, I really deliberated over it for a very long time, and it really was the last option. And I'm thankful and grateful that I had the ability to kind of go through that
Sure.
because it really did help me.
Now, forgive me. I know you said you got married. Are you still married?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, that was
Okay.
actually, we were talking about this earlier. Is that how did family and friends were like take to it? So initially, my family was not too receptive, I guess would be the way to go to it. But I I explained it in terms of um, I guess medicalization and psychology. So basically, the way I presented it was is that I had gender dysphoria, and gender dysphoria is a disorder that creates problems with your self perception, your body image, and it as it develops, it creates depression and anxiety in the person, which is debilitating after a certain point in time. And
Mm,
I was out of options, and I chose to go ahead with the medicalization, the transition, which is the medicalization of the the issues that come up with gender dysphoria. And
mm,
so I went ahead and did that, and it helped. And I think that that might have helped with the conversation with my family because they kind of have always looked at it as not like, oh, I'm becoming a woman or whatever. They're basically saying, well, you're mitigating a disorder that you've had all your life, and it's effective. So we're behind you because you're better for doing this. And
mm,
that kind of happened over time. But yeah, my immediate family is 100% behind me, and they see the changes, and they certainly value it because before that I was a complete wreck. I was again I was having migraines probably about 3 times a week,
mm.
and so it
Jeez.
was pretty debilitating. And this is um, this is such a much better place than I was, just a few years ago. So yeah, they're on board. Now my friends, that was a mixed bag as well. Some of them didn't really understand it.
Mm.
It was a matter of when I presented it to them, in a lot of cases, because early on, it was basically, I think it was considered weird, and they didn't really get it, even if I did explain it
Sure.
that way. But the funny thing is that my friends that I didn't see all that often, I showed up later, after, the facial feminization and the breast augmentation and, the voice lessons, and, it's just kind of getting integrated. They would
Hmm.
look at me. Well, first off, they didn't recognize me, but, the other part of it is like when, uh, they would, they would say things like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that was a good decision." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I think that it was a good decision." So, they were on board.
So you're you got married to a woman, correct?
Right, that's
And
right.
you're still married to that woman.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah,
she
that's
obviously she's
it's
okay with it. Yeah.
she
I mean, was
well,
she on board prior to like marriage? Like
she
you had
didn't
some
know.
thoughts.
She didn't know. I kept it
Okay.
on the down low the whole time. I know that some people
Okay.
were like, "Why would you do that?" Well, actually, there's a good reason for it, because at the time I felt like I was coping. That it wasn't really an aspect of my life that I was going to pursue. So I felt like I was in a state where things were managed, they were good, and I didn't really need to actually say anything about it, because I was doing a good job of keeping everything, holding everything together. So
Mm.
I don't think that there was any lying or deception here. It was just a matter of, at the time, things were different than, I guess it would have been 18 years later. I was running into health issues due to my cope. So it changed. The situation
Yeah.
changed. The thing is that if I would have come out before getting married, or just shortly thereafter, I doubt that it would have actually came out the same way that it did. In terms of, when you're first married, um, that partnership is based a lot on, physical attraction, sexuality, and just that physicality that you have between two young people. But as you get older, you build a partnership that's far beyond that. And, by the time you're in your late 40s, the way I think, if you're doing it right, you have a partnership that's not just, sexual, and it's not just physical, but you have a deep, sensual relationship that kind of transcends all that. And I think that that's the reason why we stay together, is because we're good together. We're
Sure.
solid, and you know the kids see that too. So we've been together for, uh, gosh, 24 years now, and
Okay.
we have no intention of splitting up, and we're doing great in that regard. So yeah.
Mm. Now, I mean, you don't look 56
No.
to
Well,
me, but I'm old as crust too. So I mean, yeah.
well, the surgeries actually kind of help with that, honestly, and the hormones also help with that. And I do things to kind of mitigate my aging, like Botox, and doing fillers and that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
it's not magic. It's basically chemistry, I guess. But I've done some laser procedures and chemical peels and that sort of thing. As you get
Mm.
older, you have to make a decision. Am I going to just let it go, or I'm going to just fight this? And I kind of
Hmm.
decided I was going to fight it the whole way. So I would get that opportunity to kind of live that complete life. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever, get up? I don't know, once in a while and just say, "Fuck it." I'm not going to make up. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to get up and t-shirt, jeans, and not doll yourself up and just go through the day in that sense.
Yeah, I do it a lot, but it doesn't it doesn't matter really. There was a time when, gosh, for the longest time, I was kind of in a state of denial because all the changes are pretty glacial. You don't really notice it from day to day. You're like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was at the gym,
Mm.
and I don't undress or anything like that at the gym, by the way, but I do use the locker rooms because I need a locker to stuff my stuff in so I can go work out. And
Now, which
I
locker room are you going into, men or women?
well, I at that time I was going into the men's locker room, but I got kicked
Mhm.
out.
Really?
They didn't want me in there anymore, and I was like, "Oh, I guess that's a sign." So
Wait, wait,
yeah,
wait. Because you look like a woman, or because?
they're like, "I think you're in the wrong place," and yeah,
Okay. Well,
old
what
guy
about the opposite?
complained.
What about going into the women's room now? Are there any
I
women that
actually do
are
go into the women's room, but
that anyone say that they know? I guess if they don't know, it doesn't matter. But
actually, that's interesting because there's a fair number of people that do know, and that's actually one aspect of late transition that I think a lot of people don't really understand, and that is that if you're like 18 and you transition, a lot of times you can kind of go stealth, as they say, where you kind of step into your identity and you can live your life without anybody really knowing.
mm,
I'm, day to day, I'm integrated, but there's tons of people that know that I'm trans, and it's everywhere in the community. They go, "Oh yeah, there's Teegan. Hey Teegan, you're the curiosity of the day." So it's sort of like that. But yeah, there's lots of women that at that gym that know I'm trans, but they don't care because I don't create issues.
mhm,
If you're I like I said, I don't hang out there. I just kind of throw my stuff in a locker and get out, and
mhm,
that's kind of how I actually that's all I how I always proceeded with those types of things because I never liked hanging out in the locker room anyway. Even when I was like a guy, I was like, ugh,
mhm.
yeah, I don't want to. I want to do that. I'll just shower at home, thanks. So that's what I do.
So, what about what do you say, or what's your feelings? I don't think you need to say anything, but what your feelings on, you know, biological men and women's sports?
Oh gosh.
People that think it might be a mental disorder, stuff like that. Like, what's the misconception?
All right. So I guess I'll start with the mental disorder part of it because I think a lot of people, my stance is not congruent with the community because I do think it's a mental disorder.
You do.
It stems transition isn't so. That's the medicalization of the mental disorder that is gender dysphoria. Gender
Okay.
dysphoria is a an issue with self perception, and transition is one of many possible treatments you could do to kind of mitigate the issue of gender dysphoria.
Mm,
But in the end, it is a mental disorder. Transition is just one of the ways to treat it. So I don't think that jibes well with a lot of trans activists or community dogma on that. So I'll probably be on the outside on that one, but that's
mhm,
what I think. In terms of sports, I guess I deviate a little bit on this too. So here's my take on it. So back in the 70s, the United States came up with Title IX, which basically mandated women's sports. And it was a good thing. We really needed it. And it was something that really has been a great benefit for college and for women and for society at large. Being able to compete in a meaningful way at the college level is just a great thing. And Title IX was basically the start of all that. When trans women started introducing themselves into women's sports, they would do this by, um, you know, just kind of competing like at the team level. What I find in my own personal estimation is that, before I transitioned as a guy, if I competed, I was mediocre. Maybe on a scale to from 1 to 10, I was maybe a 5 or a 6. So I was not that great. But after transition, if I competed against guys, I would absolutely get trounced. So my competitive level against men at this point is probably about a 1, but against women it's much higher, so it would be like a 7 or an 8. And I'm not gonna win every time. There's no way, and I think that that actually is the case in most circumstances with trans women. Is that when you compete against other women, you have just this slight marginal advantage. But here's the problem: it's not actually at the individual level; it's at the team level and the league level, and then it kind of like cascades out from there. What happens is that when you have that marginal advantage, and you're playing like softball or something, you're the one trans woman on this team, and then they start to win more, right? And but they don't win like the championship because of you or anything like that, but they're winning more. The coach will probably say, well, I think that this person is doing really well. Maybe it's because they're trans. So they get another one and they have that slight marginal advantage again. And over time, the other teams start to see that there's trans women that are competing on that team that's winning more. And so basically, because of the nature of competition, you want to win, there will be more and more trans women entering those sporting events, not because they have any type of nefarious end or whatever. It's just because they have that slight marginal advantage over the women when they're competing. And basically, what happens then is that over time, women's sports becomes trans women's sports because everybody wants them on their team, and I don't think that would be doing anybody a service, and certainly not women, certainly not colleges, and I think we'd be worse for it to do it. Now, I don't really have a great answer to fix
No,
that
I
problem.
I like the way you explained it. Uh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's a difficult prospect because I know that there's value in competition, and trans women are just like everybody else. They want to compete, and well, what do you do? I mean, on the one side, oftentimes you're going to find that trans women are just going to be absolutely destroyed on a men's team. If they're on a women's team, yeah, they have an advantage, but it's still, in the end, uh, probably not fair.
not
So
fair to the women, to
yeah,
the
so
biological women, of
it's
course. Yeah.
it ends up being, well, how do you manage that? I,
Mm,
I thought about this for a bit. I was like thinking, well, you could throw in a handicap or something like that, where you could do that. But I think
mm.
that doesn't really work either,
No,
especially like for
no,
team sports. I mean, what do? You spot them a couple points if they don't have a trans woman on your team? That sounds
that would be
silly.
complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
Uh,
really sure what you would do with that, honestly, but it is a complicated problem, and I think a lot of people are rather flippant about it because there just aren't that, in the grand scheme of things, there's just not that many trans women, and the anybody that's doing competition as a trans woman is probably, it's still probably pretty rare. The ones that stand out are the ones that are, um, you know absolute athletes that are just killing it. And I don't that stands out as an outlier, but it's also just a feature of that whole thing, and it doesn't look good to trans women or to the trans community if you're, you know if you're an MMA fighter and you're beating the crap out of a woman. Gosh, I can't even
it's not good.
imagine how that
Yeah.
that that came about.
Yeah, that's not good.
But there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I agree. So do you feel like a woman, or do you think you're a woman? I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's like
Yeah.
obviously you feel like a woman, but do you think you're a woman?
Um, I don't actually think that I'm a woman. I don't believe that. I mean, I think that would be kind of delusional. I'm dealing with, again, I'm dealing with gender dysphoria. So I'm in a state where I I strive to look this way, and I work hard to integrate so that I'm not creating issues with other people or society or work or whatever. I'm just trying to do the best I can with this issue.
And you're
And
happier.
what's that?
And you're happier.
Yes,
That's the
absolutely.
bottom line, right? I mean,
Yeah, so it puts me in a better state when I'm doing this. So there's that. So, but I don't believe that I'm a woman. I was born male. I was born a man, and
mhm,
transition helps me mitigate my self perception issues. And I
mhm,
think that again, that's a bit of a deviation, I think, from what the community believes. But
yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at in that regard
Do
too.
you get any blowback or whatever you want to call it
Oh my gosh,
now?
yes.
Still, like at work or whatever, like people can be rude. I mean, that is.
Well, actually, I came out of work, I think, in just before I had the facial feminization surgery. I think it was in 2020. It was over COVID, I guess. And no, actually, it was one of these things where most people were just kind of afraid to confront it, I guess. They were afraid that HR would come knocking if they
Hmm. Sure.
misgendered me or whatever.
But
And
where do you work if you don't mind me asking, or what
well,
do you do?
actually, I don't work there anymore.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was recently released, I guess is the
Okay.
way I put
So,
it. So,
so at that time, you were getting like people were afraid to
oh yeah,
bring it up, even if they were genuine, because all it takes is one person to say, "Hey, you
yeah.
shouldn't be saying that," and back and forth, and it's,
So,
yeah.
yeah, eventually I just had a meeting with the entire team and I basically said, look, I don't care. I don't, if you mess up, it's okay. I get that this is a little bit of a strange situation. You guys, you don't have to walk on eggshells around me. It's okay. I
Mm,
understand. Um, they have been great, or they were great. So that it was one of those things where I was really kind of worried how that was going to land, but honestly, that the whole company was just great, and
mm,
there was never any issues. Clients sometimes were interesting. The most interesting story. I don't think it didn't have anything to do with trans. It had more to do with sexism actually, and it was a situation where I was working with a client. I've been a long-term expert with them, uh, and
What type
they
of work was it, if
oh,
you
it
don't
was
mind me
technical
asking?
work. So I
Okay.
was on the phone with them a lot, and
Okay.
I had worked with them probably about a decade before I transitioned, and there was a lull in projects with them, but they called me back um, after transition, and they were talking about one of the issues with one of the products I had been helping them with, and I was basically kind of throwing together a plan for them, a new project to kind of get this working for them in a way that was like amiable to their ends. And the guy spoke up and said, "Well, you know." Tegan, you seem like you know your stuff, but I'd rather work with the expert, which was me, my old name. And I was like, oh dear. And
Was
honestly,
Tegan your is Tegan your birth name or no?
No, I
Oh, okay.
changed it.
Okay.
I actually, that was one of the things that um, a trans woman acquaintance that I have encouraged, and I think she was right to do it. She said that I should change my name legally and get my birth certificate updated so that there aren't
Okay.
issues afterwards for
Sure.
integration and that sort of thing. And
Got it.
that was a good idea,
Mhm.
and especially in this political climate, because I think they don't let people do that anymore, which I think is not the best. I I've had a lot of discussions about that sort of thing, and there have been some changes within the zeitgeist, I guess, since January, and
Mhm.
some of it is okay. Some of it I feel like is really vindictive, and the passport and the license stuff seems to be a little vindictive. But I'm so far, I have to say that the name change was a very good idea in my estimation.
Okay. All right. Now, before we wrap it up, I notice a lot of guitars behind you. Is there do you collect guitars? You're in a band? What's going on?
Well, I used to play guitar quite a bit. It was kind
In a
of
band or just to play?
Well, no, not really. I tried a few times to be in a band. I don't get along with other musicians. But it's one of those things where I did it for a really long time, so I collected different guitars for kind of different sounds and different uses. So I have a few, but I guess over the last year or so, I kind of got away from playing. So they've been on the wall for a while. I mean, I dip in every now and then, and I'm like, oh yeah, I still got it.
Well, look, Tegan, this has been great. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's
Right.
been very enlightening. This is a great chat.
Well, I appreciate it, and if you ever feel like you need to kind of reach out again, I'm around. I'll talk about pretty much whatever. And
Sure.
this was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thank you.